Brazil and South Africa, they belong to the BRICS.
Yeah.
So we cannot forget about this. So we have two giants, one from Africa, South Africa, and one from South America, Latin America, Brazil. So the two countries combined with the other three forming the BRICS is a block or a forum that we should not leave out of the discussion. But Brazil and Africa as a continent, it's more and more linked now. And I quoted the former president of Brazil, Lula, when he said in 2003 that Brazil should be a priority for his government. And in fact, he meant it. When he traveled many times to Africa, he brought many business people to see the potential of Africa.
And Africa should be a priority for Brazil.
For Brazil, for Brazilian government, but also from the private sector. And I think it's a good moment for us to think now that Brazil should look outside of Brazil and look for partners. I keep saying to Brazilians, Africa is a good place to invest and to be profitable. And in fact, I see results. And when I come to Africa, and I come in very often to many places within the continent, I see absolutely fantastic possibilities of doing things for Brazilians. But also, I see Africans coming to Brazil, discovering the possibility of investing, but doing business with Brazilians, but with Brazil as well.
If you are to look at the stats, close to 80% of Brazilians actually do have an African background, ancestry, should I say. Does that present an opportunity for investment or even a mutual understanding, or is that really in the past?
Well, I think we have to see what the assets that we have in our hands. If we look to the heritage, the cultural aspect, it's very important to use this as a tool, as an important tool. If you look to some cities in Brazil, for example, Salvador of Bahia, 80% of the population is black people. Sometimes when I come to Salvador of Bahia, I feel that like I'm just in Nigeria, for example. When you go to Nigeria, the food is just like the food from Salvador. I'm just taking an example. If you go to Rio, you see the same similarities. If you go to the south of Brazil, yes, you can see some connection, close connection with the African continent. And we should take advantage of this. The diaspora of Africa in Brazil, it's very big. If you go to São Paulo, it's a dense population of Afro-descendants. So we should not leave this out of the discussion, and could be a good opportunity for companies as well to do things in Brazil, look into the opportunities that we bring from this aspect of culture and history.
Of course, in regards to my last question, what I meant there was particular cities, not Brazil as a whole, when it comes to that 80% having an Afro ancestry. The Brazil-Africa conversation and the forum, which is actually taking place later on this year, it's quite interesting times when you're looking at some countries having a more nationalist policy and moving away from free trade. And on the other hand, you're having the likes of maybe China and Brazil looking for more opportunities, looking to embrace trade as a whole, as we've come to know it maybe in the past 80 or 100 years. How tough is it, at least in this particular time, to talk free trade? Give me a sense of this particular one from the Brazilian end of things.
Well, free trade is not easy to discuss, because when you look to countries, you have the limits, the barriers, you have defenses that every country wants to have considered. But of course, when you start to say, we need to remove the walls, because we need to have people moving free, easily, also have goods. But it's not that easy just to put 54 countries that we have in Africa talking the same language, the same aspect, the same currency. It's not easy. But for Brazil and Africa, I think we have some countries that could be a potential opportunity for Brazil to enter the continent. I mean, the numbers in Africa are very huge, very big, 1.2, 1.5 billion. I mean, it's too much. Brazil has to have 200 million people, which is a good number as well. But we need to see what countries could be a good moment to enter the continent. You mentioned the forum this year, and we will be talking about something very special in November 22, 22nd in Salvador of Bahia, which is youth empowerment.
Yeah.
And this could be a trigger to enlarge the possibility of cooperation, but also partnership between companies, trade from Brazil and Africa as well. It's not easy to know each other, but we need to start. I keep saying to African diplomats, African ambassadors, if you go to Brazil, deep in Brazil, not to big cities like São Paulo, Rio, but try to understand what is the size of Brazil, the dimension, and the possibilities. And you see how possible it would be for Brazil to know Africa. At the same time, I speak with Africans. Go to Brazil and understand the potential. And to Brazilians to come to Africa is a reality. People think that Africa is just one place, which is not true, for sure. But how can we understand that we have 54 countries? We need to come to Africa. And the Brazil-Africa Institute is a bridge that we try to use to engage the two sides of the Atlantic.
Finally, of course, with what you're actually mentioning here, but what countries would stick out to be an entry point, at least for Brazilian companies or Brazil public cooperation? What countries do stick out right now? I don't want to go with the obvious choice, which would be maybe a country that speaks Portuguese, like maybe in Southern Africa. What countries would stick out for you?
Well, it's not easy, and it's not fair for me to answer our 54 countries. What country would be the potential entry? I understand that we should see numbers, scale. If you go to Nigeria, for example, 200 million people. If you go to South Africa, almost 60 million. So those, if you go to Egypt, or if you go to Sudan, those countries, for the dimension and the size, could be a possibility for companies to enter, to gain the ground within the continent. But I think the geography and the language should not be the primary discussion. We need to understand what is the potential. There are companies in Brazil that want to come to Africa. It doesn't matter if the country speaks Portuguese, French, or English. If they know that the potential exists, they will come. As I said earlier, Africa is a profitable place. If they understand that, they will come to Africa.